SaaS companies, manufacturing companies, pretty much anyone in between is now using video in some way, shape, or form for their business in most cases. So it's really, really making its way through the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely really effective. I mean, it has everything in terms of like a content medium that you could ask for. It combines audio and visual, and incorporates that human element that you just can't get through, a blog post or a social message or through an email. And in this highly digital world, it's really great to be able to incorporate real people into your marketing content. And it's obviously proven to be super effective, and it's really flexible for a bunch of different content types, as we're going to discuss today. It can really be used at every single stage of the buyer's journey, all the way through customer retention and internal and all over. So it's really great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are tuning in today probably already convinced that video is important. So I don't think we need to really stay on that subject for too long, but I do think it's nice to kind of illustrate the impact that it's had and talk about the effectiveness. So on the screen we have a few stats here, which kind of highlight the different ways that video is used both in marketing, sales, and service. I think somewhere around 97% of marketers say that videos increase their understanding of a product or service, and 70-something% of sales reps are now using it. People are using it in sales outreach. They're using it for customer support and tickets. Marketers are using it all the time. So everyone across every department of the business is now using video in some way, shape, or form. So it's really proving to be a strong medium.
Yeah, the connection that one receives through a video versus any other means is really important. It gets that emotional connection there.
Definitely.
So, great. Well, so let's kind of like talk about what types of videos you can create and how this would look within the buyer's journey too. For somebody who, hasn't dived into this yet and they're wondering, well, what types of videos would I need to create if I was going to attract somebody, or if they wanted to learn more about my product. Can you kind of chat about that through the 3 different stages?
Sure, yeah. And I guess, before we dive into that, we kind of wanted to like pull the audience and ask you all, what kinds of video content are you producing most and why? And I guess, how has it turned out for you so far? Because we're going to be talking now about how to really use it all the way through the buyer's journey. So starting with the awareness stage. So that's your top of funnel. Somebody is just becoming aware that they have a problem. They're looking at primarily educational content. So they're researching, they're trying to find more information. So your video content should obviously match that intent. So types of videos that are going to be really high level, not product specific, but more so general and broad so that they can better educate themselves.
Yeah, I think in this stage of the funnel where people are trying to understand that the fact that they even have a challenge, it's really important to be a bit more casual. Something that we've seen a lot of success with, both for ourselves and with a lot of companies just out there on LinkedIn and on Facebook or Twitter, is selfie style videos. Something that's more laid back and relaxed has proven to be really effective. It allows you to be a bit more personal. It allows people to make a human connection with somebody else. And it puts a face to a name in a lot of cases too. Sometimes if you're reading a blog post, you might read something from the same person over and over again, but you feel like you don't know that person until you watch them on a video, and you feel like you have a stronger connection with them after that.
It can also enhance your other pieces of marketing content. So, when I'm sending out marketing emails to our database and it's signed Amanda Nielsen, and then they're able to see me in a video, it makes it more of a genuine connection, and it's not just some random automated email, like there's a real person writing it. And we have some examples of some really effective selfie style videos on the screen from our friends at OpenView. Some of you may have heard of Casey Renner and her weekly walks. She literally just walks around Boston with her cell phone like this, and she'll just interview somebody in the industry, and they get a ton of engagement. Same for Tyler Lessard at Vidyard. He'll often just do a very casual, it feels like you're FaceTiming him, one-to-one conversation, just talking about whatever's on his mind or whatever important lesson he wants to discuss that day. But it's super low production value, and it's really effective.
Yeah, I think it's great to use video to build your brand. That's what Tyler and OpenView have been doing with that. And another thing that I feel like is really valuable about video is it can help put a name to a face, but a lot of people, I don't think, buy from automated messages so much anymore. That's something that we've been talking about a lot at New Breed, is people buy from other people. They don't buy from an email that goes out to them necessarily. An email will help nurture them through to maybe the next stage in the buyer's journey, but at the end of the day, they want to talk to somebody more often than not. And a video helps create that connection sooner in the process than it normally would otherwise. So we've seen a lot of success with that in creating branding videos for us, introducing ourselves a little bit earlier in the process, making people feel like they know us before we even have a conversation with them. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. It's great for also exemplifying your culture for recruiting efforts. And another really great thing about culture and culture videos is that people can get a sense of who they're going to be working with if they are a customer. So they almost get like a sneak peek, and it can be really effective that way. So, yeah.
Do you want to chat a little bit about like consideration if we're moving into that stage where somebody's, hasn't quite bought into your product or your business or whatever it may be, your brand, but they're, thinking about it and investigating a little bit more? What would those kind of videos look like?
Definitely. So the consideration stage, like you said, is where someone at this point recognizes that they have a challenge. They know that they have something that they need to solve for. And at the consideration stage, you want to really help somebody define that problem and put a full definition around what that looks like and how to potentially solve for it. So the videos that you want to use at this stage are going to be more educational, how-to videos. Webinars are great for this. Even though a webinar is typically a slide deck, I think people are incorporating a lot more live elements into webinars where they're showing both people and slides at the same time. And webinars can allow you to get really in-depth on a particular topic and show somebody the step-by-step process of how to solve a particular challenge. And you don't need to necessarily get into your solution at that stage. I think it's good to set up how that challenge can be solved in general and the ways in which that you might do it without necessarily getting into your product or service. And that can be supremely beneficial at that point in the stage. At the consideration stage, another thing that we've seen a lot of success with too is using video for sales outreach. So we use Vidyard at New Breed, and one of the great things that I've seen our sales reps doing a lot lately is they'll do a little quick video of themselves and then talk about why they're reaching out. Again, putting a name to the face and then referencing that person with what we use whiteboards a lot at our office. So we'll put a whiteboard up with their name and just say hi and get things started that way. And it works out really well.
Yeah, it's definitely attention grabbing because it's super personalized. Like you can't get more personalized than that. It's a lot more effective to see somebody's name handwritten, like your own name, rather than in the email subject line where they're just using an automated personalization token. So it's really effective in that respect. And you can once you've built rapport with that prospect, you can get even more personalized. Some of our reps will draw like little pictures if they know personal details, or sometimes they'll incorporate humor into it. Or on Halloween, we had a few sales reps doing Vidyard outreach with like their costumes on, which was hilarious. And from what I heard, it was really effective, and the prospects thought it was great. So definitely.
Yeah, one thing that one of our reps does that I really like is with Vidyard, you can see how much of a video somebody watched. So if he sends a personalized video out to somebody and sees that they watched maybe 40 or 50% of it, he'll reply to them and say, hey, I noticed you only watched 50% of my video. Why didn't you finish it? And he sees so much success with people responding to that second outreach where he has that follow-up incorporated into it than any other content or types of outreach that he does on a typical basis. So it's really exciting to see people get creative with that. I think like there's that whole mindset on sales teams a lot of times where if you're trying to book a meeting with somebody, there's that smile and dial approach where you're just calling through a list of people and it doesn't allow you to be as creative, and video just opens that up in a whole new way, and it's proven to be really successful so far.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and it really emphasizes the point we made earlier about like people don't buy from automated emails and blog posts and content offers. They buy from real people, and so it's really effective for establishing that connection and that relationship.
Right. There's relatability involved there and being able to see the other person.
Exactly. And the last point that we didn't really touch on too much yet is, apart from just going through how-to videos, webinars, and stuff like that on the marketing side, I think consideration stage videos can also start to incorporate some product demos so people can see a little bit about how your product actually works, what it does. people feel a lot more comfortable buying something that they have a lot more familiarity with, and they're willing to speak to someone once they are more familiar with what the product actually does and the value proposition that it has at that point. So product demos can be great at the consideration stage for that purpose as well.
Great. Can you take us through then to like the last stage, the decision stage?
Definitely.
And sort of the videos that are in that part. Could you also consider the product demo to be in that stage too as well?
Yeah, I'll let you speak to this a little bit. But.
Sure. So as we know, in the decision stage, somebody is about to make a decision. So they've identified their problem, they've considered multiple solutions, and now they're essentially narrowing it down to you or your competitors. And so this is where the video content is really high stakes, and it's, you know, making or breaking a deal. So it can be really valuable there. To your point earlier, you can incorporate product demos into this stage, especially if you're doing like a personalized walkthrough, rather than just saying, you know, here's our product, here's a video. But like if you're making a personalized video for your prospect and saying like, hey, we talked about this on the phone, here's that feature that you really wanted to dig into, you can become even more personalized, believe it or not. So that can be really effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the decision stage is really one where, as Amanda said, you really want to get focused and targeted with what you're doing at that point. One of the things that we'll do is we do assessments at the decision stage of the buyer's journey. So we'll just go through everything that our clients are doing on the marketing side today and how we could improve that for them. And putting a video together of that they can then use later is great to use at the decision stage. So a challenge that I think a lot of companies have is during the sales process, more often than not, you're speaking with your champion. So someone who is potentially bought into what you're selling or the service that you're offering, but they need to then deliver that message to the ultimate decision maker at the company. And if you have a video of the value proposition that you're delivering and allowing your champion to bring that straight to the decision maker so that the decision maker can see it in the exact way that you'd want to present it, it just carries so much more weight with it than it typically would. You don't have to rely necessarily on your champion doing the work for you at that point, it's really helpful. Because a lot of times your champion is not a sales rep. They're not necessarily going to be skilled at pitching in the same way that you're going to be. So having it done in the exact way that you'd want it to be done makes it a lot more effective.
Yeah, definitely, and it ensures that there's transparency and that, you know, the message is being effectively communicated. And another piece of video content that's really effective at this stage of the buyer's journey is obviously your customer testimonials. At New Breed, we've been putting some together, and they've been so awesome. Mm-hmm. On the screen, we have one of our friend Jonathan at Super Pedestrian, and so this is really great for, you know, adding peace of mind to the buying process, so that your prospect can see that there are real people who are actually finding benefit in your product or solution. These are going to need to be very high production value, so no selfie videos here, unfortunately. But you can get really creative still, and it can be just really great to build that relationship with your existing client base and let them, you know, be evangelists of your brand. Our clients have been super excited to participate in our testimonials, and us too. We just did one for Insight Squared the other day, and it was awesome. Like, it's really easy to get video content like that.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of time. If you have a set list of questions that you want to ask most of your testimonials, it makes the process go really quickly. That was basically the process that we went through with Insight Squared. It took maybe 30 minutes of my time to talk to them, and we haven't seen the finished version yet, but I'm sure it'll turn out great. The other thing that's great about testimonials is that a lot of times during the sales process, people start asking for referrals or try to find some way where they can get a trust mark to work with during the sales process. And if they see a testimonial before they even have the opportunity to ask for that referral, a lot of times they'll just avoid that entirely, and it makes the sales process just move that much faster and that much more seamlessly, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I mean, you can write case studies all day, but, you know, unless you have that actual real person that you helped there, you know, providing that insight on your behalf, it's not the same at all. So definitely important to have a balance of both video and case study, like written testimonial. So
yeah. So what other types of videos that maybe deviate outside of the buyer's journey but could also be just as important for companies to be creating? Are there any other videos that you think people should be thinking about
Absolutely. So once somebody becomes a customer, you're not done speaking with them. You're not done interacting with them by any means. So we've started using video a lot more on our services team. Most companies, whether they're a service company like us or a software company, they're going to have customers that need help after the fact. So creating videos that allow for personalized engagement to address a specific question or challenge that comes up a lot across your client base can be great to do. It kind of helps scale that process so you're not responding to each individual request or support ticket individually. You're able to then provide them with a video or send them to a video library that has frequently asked questions, walkthroughs, stuff like that. Something that I've had to do in the past when working with clients is if they ask a question about how do I do this in, I don't know, in HubSpot, for example, you'll have to do screenshots and step-by-step guides, point to things on the screenshot, stuff like that. And it's a bit time-consuming and cumbersome. And maybe once that email is created, you can then send it out to other people. But if you have a video walkthrough, it just makes it so much easier. You're able to actually click through and show somebody in a lot more detail what they're doing, get them more familiar with the product itself, so that way you're enabling them to use the product in a better way. So the support side of things and the service side of things is huge for video as well.
Yeah, definitely. And especially for our business, it's really great for when you're trying to explain a complex solution and, you know, your client is however many miles away and you're not there in person together. And you can't sync up on the phone or whatever, you can send them a video and then they'll have it to reference later on or pass along to a coworker who's experiencing the same problem with the product or whatever. And to Guido's point too, you can really build out like an extensive library of helpful content for your customer base, which is going to save a ton of time in the long run as well. Another thing that you can use video for is your internal efforts for training and onboarding, especially as your company scales and you're bringing on more people all the time. If there's like a certain set of things that somebody needs to learn before they can start diving into their role, it's really great to create video content and essentially like an internal library for your new hires to really learn and reference later on as they're ramping up and things like that. And it's definitely super effective there as well.
Yeah, when we hire people, we try to hire in batches so that way we're scaling the onboarding and training process as much as possible. Makes things go much smoother that way. But still, it takes time out of people's day. Most of the trainings that we're doing are 30 minutes to an hour long, and that's taking time out of that person's day to do that training where they could potentially be doing work. If you have a video that can provide the same value, it just makes everyone else's day go a little bit smoother. I know people can tend to get a little stressed out if they know that they're going to have to do trainings and it'll take them away from the due dates and the deadlines that they have to hit that day. So if you can avoid that entirely with a nice training video to supplement that instead, it makes that go much smoother.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also kind of a cool way if you're doing like a vidyard, like screen capture, it shows your little picture in the corner and your face. So it's a good way to kind of get to know some people on your team. And yeah, again, establishing relationships is like a really great thing about video content in every single capacity.
Mm-hmm. Great. I love this idea of like repurposing content too. That's something that I think a lot about in terms of just like if you're using a video that's about like your team's culture. If it's a culture video, how can you then like repurpose that to even be something that people see in the onboarding process to learn more about your team?
Yeah.
So finding those opportunities where you can use all of these different videos in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like one of the biggest barriers for small marketing teams is, you know, oh my God, we don't have any video content and, you know, it's really hard to produce it. But what they don't realize is that there's a lot of opportunities. You know, if you're doing webinars, you can break a 30-minute webinar up into, you know, 5-minute chunks on specific topics and then host it as just a regular like video on a landing page or on a blog post and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of ways for marketers to kind of like get their toes wet a little bit without actually diving right in.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important to consider when thinking about repurposing videos is if you're doing a live event like this, or if you're doing a webinar or something, a lot of times you have more time that you can spend speaking on video. You can speak up to 30 minutes or an hour and people will tune in and pay attention to that. But most videos online are less than 2 minutes long. And we've even noticed for any videos that we've produced that are even 10 minutes long, people start to tune out at the 2-minute mark. So you can take, again, like a 30-minute webinar, like Amanda said, and break that up into small chunks, and that'll actually get more value than you would if you tried to get the entire webinar out to people. People watch more of it, and you're able to send targeted messages about a specific topic within the webinar to somebody rather than the entire webinar itself, and hope that they comb through the entire thing to find the answer that they're looking for.
Right, and you don't even necessarily need like a camera. You can use like a screen capture through QuickTime or Vidyard or whatever, and just do like a walkthrough with voiceover, and then you know, throw it into Adobe Premiere and add graphics and music or whatever, and you have like a full video product, and you even use a camera. And so there's a lot of different workarounds that people don't necessarily like realize are there that aren't being capitalized on. So it's definitely really important to consider that as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I want to kind of dive into the production part, starting with like pre-production and, all right, so you know what video you want to create, but how do you actually make that happen? And for the audience out there, if you are diving into video or if you have not yet dived into video, like what are some obstacles that are preventing you from getting to that place? And how are you currently producing videos? So if either of you can kind of chat a little bit about what are the first steps that somebody needs to consider as they're getting into the production portion?
Definitely. So at the very beginning, whenever you're going to produce any video, one of the first things that you should think about is what is the purpose of this video going to be? Who's the target audience? What are the goals? What do you want to get out of this video? Where will it be used? So we talked a little bit about how videos should be used at the awareness stage and the consideration stage. So all of that should be taken into consideration before putting a video together. And then also think about what constraints you have. So do you have a budget to work with? What's your deadline? We recently had a video come up that was kind of last minute that we wanted to produce, and we had to figure out, okay, what can we do to put together something that we feel comfortable with, that's going to be high enough quality that we feel proud about within this tight deadline. And that's something that you need to consider pretty much every time you're producing a video. It's very infrequently where you have unlimited resources at your disposal to be able to create something that's amazing and incredible. So all of that stuff should be taken into account before getting a video started. And then lastly, it's good to think about what would be, how would you measure the success of this video? So you'll establish what the goal is, but then how are you actually going to track that, and what does success look like once it's created?
Yeah, and I think another important thing is making sure that your process for, determining the goal, how you're going to distribute it, how you're going to produce it, what the style is going to be, is an established process that's scalable and transferable across your whole company. So everybody, anyone can walk into your team and say, oh, like this is how we do video. And so there's a set process there, and that'll also help to ensure that everything is really uniform, and that, you have your branding consistent throughout all your different types of video content, whether it's a selfie video or a professionally done testimonial, things like that. A really good practice when you're thinking about producing video, especially the higher production value with like a real camera and all that, is scripting out. And so you do like a 2-column script with your audio and your shots on either side. This helps you figure out, one, what you want to shoot before you go walking around with a camera or go on site or whatever. And it helps you more effectively write to pictures. So curating your script so that it, pushes your storyline through and is more compelling. It's a lot easier to write your script and lay out your shots and then shoot than to shoot and then come back, look at all your clips and say, oh my God, what am I going to put with this? So detailing it out, everything from, whether it's a close shot, a medium shot, a long shot, whether it's an interview, what kind of graphics are going to be on the screen, if you want nat sound to be present, or if there's going to be music, things like that, can be really, really helpful and save you time in the long run, and also helping in the editing process too. Super great for streamlining that, because especially when you're making videos on the longer side, and you have a ton of clips to go through, being really organized that way will really save you time and headaches.
Another thing I think it's important to do during the scripting phase as well is to read it out loud with other people. The way you write a blog post, for example, is going to be very different than the way you speak in a video. Sometimes when you go through and write everything out, you don't realize how technical or jargony you wrote everything until you start speaking it out loud. So it's definitely important to just read through it once out loud with other people in the room to be able to listen to how it sounds before actually going through and filming it to make sure that the script is in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be really easy to get caught up, and before you know it, you're like saying things that nobody understands, and you're like, oh my God, I can't use this. So to Guido's point, like definitely, testing it out on some other people who maybe like aren't in your department and like aren't as familiar with like whatever you're talking about. And yeah, like we say script, but like if you're doing something like an interview, like a testimonial, you're likely not gonna have your interviewee actually sticking to the script. So a good practice for that is often putting like talking points or things that you kind of want them to align with. So we want you to say something like this, but say it in your own words so that it sounds natural and authentic. For the more casual top of funnel content, a script isn't necessary if you're just doing like a selfie video talking about, whatever is happening that day. But for your more technical pieces of content, like lower down the funnel, like your webinars or your product walkthroughs, you're going to want to be a little more specific and ensure that it's not too freestyle-y. But yeah, I think that's an important point.
Yeah, definitely. I think like when you write out a script as well, the one thing that you'll make sure to capture is everything that you want to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're going through something without having a script, you'll think of something after the video is over and wish that you had said it during the video. If you have it all written out ahead of time and planned out, you'll avoid that in most cases.
Yeah, there's like a fine line you have to walk between like winging it and being like super scripted. And once you find that balance, it comes out really authentic and really great most times. And yeah, and like not worrying about things like if you stumble on a couple words or repeat yourself or things like that, depending on the style. Because a lot of people will, be really hard on themselves and they look back and they're like, oh my God, I sound ridiculous, or I said this, this, and this. And it's like, it's all about the context of your video.
Yeah. I won't call anybody out from New Breed, but there was someone at our company recently who was trying to go through and create his first sales outreach video. And he was trying to get it perfect. So he went through it like 3 or 4 times, and every time he messed up, he would stop himself and then restart it and do it all over again. And one of the other guys that was on the sales team who was a bit more experienced creating those kinds of videos was like, hey, calm down, first of all, like you're fine. But just when you mess up, just keep going. Just keep talking, and that'll actually help. People will appreciate the fact that you're allowing your mess up to be in the video, and if you can even make it funny, you can play into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And people will appreciate that a lot more than if you deliver this perfectly scripted message that sounds perfect a lot of the times. It doesn't feel real anymore.
Absolutely. We have this one rep who is our Vidyard champion. He loves using video for sales outreach, and it's been super effective for him. He recorded this one Vidyard outreach, and he had himself on mute, and he sent this to a prospect, and it's just him, you can't hear anything. And then afterward, he noticed that and sent a second video and said, and made light of it, and the prospect thought it was hilarious. So being vulnerable and being genuine, especially in the sales process, is so, so valuable.
Yeah, that authenticity is key. This is bringing up a lot of memories of videos that I've created, and just like different types of, even internally to like my team, the amount of times I've just sat and done a million takes over and over again until finally I've had to say like, this is great the way that it is, because at least I'm being real, and it's okay if there's some mess ups in between. But you're right, it depends on the context of the video that really makes a difference. But we are after this like honesty and being authentic so that we can reach our customers and prospects. So
I think that's important to translate across your whole organization. We really push for everybody from our revenue team to our client services team to people who are doing like internal process changes, things like that, to use video to communicate, so that they're comfortable with that medium of communication and can more effectively convey whatever message, whether it's to a client, to a prospect, to one of their coworkers, things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to do with video is to break the ice. Just get one out there and do it. You'll be too scared otherwise to get started if you don't do it that way. So I think that's really helpful. Going back to the whole idea of what to do and consider when creating video, one of the things that we did to help try to align our own internal team, and that we're going to be rolling out to the rest of the company as we produce more and more videos, is we kind of redid our, I shouldn't say redid, we went through a branding exercise again to focus almost exclusively on video. So that way we would we already understood in a written sense how you wanted to speak to clients and prospects. But again, it's going to be different when you're talking about videos, and there's a lot more elements to consider when creating videos. So what sort of graphics would you want to incorporate? What style of videos do you want to produce at different stages of the funnel? How do you want your tone and voice to sound within a video? All of that stuff plays into your overall brand, and it's important, I think, to go through that process at the beginning before you start creating any types of videos, so you can establish a consistent tone and voice throughout all of your content. Obviously, you want to have that personal element in there. You want people to feel like they're watching something that's authentic, but if people go way too far outside of that, it can be detrimental to your brand and your organization. So it's important to set some clear guidelines of this is how we expect to speak about ourselves. This is how we expect videos to be created. That way there's just a bit of consistency across the organization.
Yeah, it definitely took us like a little bit of trial and error, because it was pretty much, 2018 was the first time we really started using video. And as Guido said, the way we write in our blog posts is not how people want to be talked to through video. So it definitely took a little bit of a learning curve to kind of get our branding down. But going through a branding exercise and really refining how we want to talk to our prospects versus our clients and people who are different stages in the buyer's journey is really, really super valuable, and is definitely can't be understated.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, because you can kind of it can be your guideline for all of your videos, and is this actually matching our brand tone, our voice? And I think just even stressing that this process feels like it takes a really long time to do. It can be a little excruciating because you are I just want to produce a video and have it done. But having all of those things determined ahead of time really makes it so that by the time you do produce the video and have that finished, you have a nice quality piece of content and don't have to go back and change things.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially considering the time and resources and money that it takes to produce high quality video, especially, you want to make sure that you know what you want before you start filming, especially when you're putting a lot of time into things like creating graphics or animations, or if you're interviewing a client or somebody who isn't internal and you only get to see them once a year, you want to make sure you get it right so that you're making the most out of your time and theirs.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing that can come up too is if you've never started video before at a company, once you start doing that, everyone at the company is going to want to jump in. And if you don't have a process in place for this is what you need to have if you want to come to us and create a video ahead of time, then that process is just going to be broken. It's going to be really difficult to create videos, and it's going to take a lot longer to do anything that way. So it's helped us out to put that in place ahead of time, to kind of lay the groundwork for anybody else and set the rules.
Yeah, you definitely don't want anyone going rogue and creating millions of videos and sending them everywhere. So having a process is definitely important. Yeah. But allowing that individuality to shine through and genuine, actual personality is important. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to call out about that production process? Because I want to get to measuring and talk about that a bit.
Yeah. Just also considering what type of equipment you'll need depending on where you are in your video strategy. So if you're just starting out, you may want to start with that really high level top of funnel content with a selfie video or a screen capture walkthrough with your webcam on your laptop. Those are going to be a lot lower barrier. Making sure that if you want to move into middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content with that higher production value, that you've thoroughly researched what kind of camera equipment you want, because it can be really expensive, unfortunately. But once you are actually creating video, it's going to be huge returns. As you could see from our stats earlier, it's really important. And so cameras, whether or not you want to use a DSLR or a different type of camera or something a little bit more entry level, making sure that you actually have somebody who can work the camera. It's a lot harder than it looks, actually. So video production people, kudos to you, because, especially when you're using DSLRs with interchangeable lenses and all these different moving parts and you're using manual modes, it can get really tricky for somebody who is kind of just dabbling and just wants to create video content. Definitely considering either hiring somebody in-house, or if you're not ready to take that plunge, outsourcing to a video production company for special occasions, if you have a client in office or something like that. Another really important thing is audio. cannot be stressed enough. Believe it or not, audio quality is higher, more important than video quality. There's not much you can do about bad audio. You can edit your way around like bad video if you're like clever. But if you have awful, echoey, horrible sound, like we were finding that in our office, we have super high ceilings, which we did not consider until we start filming. We look back and we're like, this sounds horrible. High ceilings. We have very loud teammates near us sometimes who laugh very loudly. Our coffee machine.
Yeah, we have a very loud coffee machine. We have to actually put a sign up that says no coffee making for the next hour.
Oh my God, and everyone freaks out on Slack. They're like, we need caffeine. Yep. No. But yeah, so really taking into account all those things, especially if your office is small and you don't have like a set area for video production. If you can dedicate like one conference room or like one studio area, we have a little makeshift video studio in our new office, which has been really great with like a little green screen and making sure that you have good lighting equipment. So like a couple softbox lights and making sure that you are kind of in the know of lighting production best practices. So you have your key light, your backlight, things like that. A lot of stuff you can really just look up online and it's pretty easy to learn, but definitely having like an in-house expert will make the process go a lot smoother. And that goes for editing as well. Editing is hard. So making sure that your company has access to an editing software like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro. I wouldn't recommend iMovie or anything like that, but making sure that you have somebody who can create the graphics, the animations, whatever you need. I think having animation is really important as well. It's also very difficult to do. It can really help like as like an intro to all your videos so that it's uniform and people go, oh, like this is a Newbreed video, this is a HubSpot video, something that's like identifiable. Yeah. And then also I think another thing is making sure that your talent is properly prepped and people like are super excited to be on camera and then they get up there and sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, and you know, sometimes people can get a little bit shy and it's kind of hard to like get people out of their shell.
Definitely take some practice to get people to feel comfortable in front of a camera for the first time. I remember the first time I was on camera, it was uncomfortable, and the first time that you actually watch yourself after being filmed is even worse. But I think prepping people, making them feel comfortable is really important during that process. And luckily the person that we invested in to help us get video started is really good at that. So he was able to help coach Amanda and I to feel a little bit more comfortable while being filmed. So that's been great.
That's awesome. And even doing like multiple takes, I imagine, is helpful, right? And just feeling like you can practice and do all of that before you have to have your final version.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to what we were speaking about earlier, not being super scripted and having your talking points and being more conversational and genuine helps a lot too with coming across as natural. So that you don't have to do a bunch of takes to get word for word exactly what you were scripted to say. That definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. Well, even here at Academy, you know, we have our whole setup, and I'm usually directing people to get comfortable in front of the camera too. So, it takes some time for people that are first coming in front of the camera to just feel acquainted with being in front of the lights and having a lens on them, and it just want to stress that it takes a lot to like get to that place where people can feel comfortable being on camera. So let's move on a little bit to like measuring, because this is one area that I personally struggle with, and I'd just love to like understand from your perspective, how do you know if a video is successful, and what are like ways that you can determine that, different metrics that you can measure against?
So I love data. So if I can't measure it, it's really hard for me to even consider doing it. And luckily video, especially depending which hosting mechanism you're using, can provide a lot of information and data to you. But before we get into any sort of measurement process, I always like to group types of metrics into different categories. So the three main categories that we always look at are tactical performance indicators, which are TPIs for short, LPIs, which are leading performance indicators, and KPIs, which are key performance indicators. So if you group things in that way, it can help guide how you want to actually measure the success of your video. KPIs are going to be the most important metric that you want to consider. So at the end of the day, if you're doing really well in your TPIs and your LPIs, but your KPIs are struggling, then that means that your video isn't being successful. So types of TPI metrics that I would consider will depend a little bit on the types of videos that you're producing for sure. But if you're creating a social video or a video you want to be able to share on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, how many people share that is going to be really important. Watching or keeping track of how many people are watching the entire video is also going to be important at the TPI level. And then at the LPI level, something that we want to always take a look at is how effective is the video at converting people into becoming a lead or to moving into the next stage of the buyer's journey for us. So video is proven to be really effective when it's used on landing pages to encourage people to convert. So adding a video to that page can obviously increase the conversion rate, and measuring the difference between before and after you had a video on that page can be really effective. Also gating videos. So if you have a cutoff point at maybe the minute mark or the 30-second mark after someone gets a taste for what this video is about, and then you force them to fill out a form to watch the rest of it, can be a great way to measure how well that video is at creating new contacts. And then another thing that we like to do is actually put CTAs within our videos. So the combination of all those things can really help demonstrate how well your video is at creating new contacts for you.
We have some fun background noises here in the studio.
So at the end of the day, I think the most important thing that you want to measure is, of all the people that interact with your videos, of the new contacts that you create from that, how many of them end up moving all the way through the funnel and convert into a new customer for you? Especially on the marketing side, that's going to be one of the main things that you want to keep track of. If you're just looking at engagement metrics, how many people watched it, what the play rates were, how far into the video did someone watch, that's not going to get you very far if at the end of the day none of the people that are interacting with those videos are ending up turning into new customers for you.
Right. It's super easy to get hyped up over, we got thousands of views, but, to Guido's point, if none of those views actually convert into a paying customer and you invested all this money into producing this video, it's going to be a loss for you. So definitely making sure that you're designating your key performance indicators, leading performance indicators, and tactical performance indicators to make sure that, you're actually contributing to revenue with this content.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to think about too is how to actually optimize videos once they're on your website. So some of the main things that you want to consider, as I mentioned, are how many contacts are being created through video, but you also want to take a look at how much video is driving traffic to your website as a whole. Video can be really effective at increasing dwell time on your website, which is becoming a more and more important indicator to Google. Google being the king of all things SEO and search, you always need to abide by their rules. And again, dwell time is coming into play for that. So video keeps people on your site longer. Ideally, will keep people more engaged and looking through more pages, which can really help out. You also want to make sure that you optimize all of your video content to make sure that you have an optimized title tag and description. And even things like the thumbnail of your video can be really important. A meta description or a thumbnail might not be something that is a performance indicator for Google necessarily, but it can help encourage click-throughs and play-throughs on your videos. We've seen and studies have shown that having a face within the thumbnail of your video can actually increase engagement quite a bit. So it's important to make sure you have stuff like that incorporated into there. And the last thing that I would say to help increase the performance of a specific video is adding a transcript on the page. So if you're producing a video that's 10 minutes in length, you can create a blog or a premium content offer off of that and help increase the value of the page as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. It creates more value for the viewer and also SEO value. And so, yeah, it's to optimize your video for SEO. It's pretty similar to what you would do for a blog post or a website page. Having people embed your video, obviously, on their own websites is going to be really valuable, too, to driving traffic, things of that nature. And then also considering, what you're hosting it on. A lot of tools like Vidyard or HubSpot Video have built-in tools for SEO optimization for video, which is really important. And, going back to the A/B testing for, your thumbnail, so you can figure out what's going to be most effective. So, hosting your video content on YouTube may not be as effective for this type of thing. And up until recently, video wasn't really a thing that people could use for lead generation, because before we had Vidyard, Wistia, things like that, people were just using YouTube and Vimeo in an attempt to kind of drive people to their website, but there was really no way for somebody to convert right there and then, and chances are if you're on YouTube, you're probably going to stay on YouTube and watch more videos. And so by hosting your video content, not just on those types of platforms, but on your actual website, you can keep people on the site longer, you can convert them, you can drive them to other content offers within your site. So using a tool is going to be really valuable and pretty much essential to investing any effort or time or money into video, because ultimately you want to generate leads and revenue with it.
Well, that was one of the main things that I had to consider when we were thinking about investing in video, because we knew it was going to be a big upfront cost, and if we weren't going to be able to see any results from it, it wasn't going to be worth it for us. You're going to be spending a decent amount of time, money, and energy producing video content, so you want to make sure that you're going to get some returns out of it. Outlining all of those different types of metrics that you want to use to measure the success of your video is going to be important. And using a tool like Vidyard for us has been great. We're able to see and track through from the very first time that someone becomes aware of us, all the way until they become a customer, how many videos they've watched, how engaged they've been with those videos over time. We can even see the videos that our sales team is producing on the outreach side and how engaged they are with those. So it's working across the board for us in terms of measurement. So without being able to get all of that information to us, we wouldn't be able to go back to the CFO at our company and be able to say, this is why it was so important for us to invest in video, and this is why we need to keep doing it.
Yeah, and another great feature of something like Vidyard or HubSpot Video, where you can host a whole different slew of videos, is like our sales reps will have a video library. So if they have an example of an outreach that worked really well, they can share it with the sales team in the Slack and say, hey, check this out, and everyone can go in and look, and there's a lot of examples and ways for them to learn from each other, things like that. They also have access to sales enablement content from the marketing team, so they can easily go into our portal, go into the marketing folder, and find all the different testimonials and whatever. So definitely having a lot of transparency can and accessibility to video content across your marketing and sales can really promote marketing and sales alignment, which is supremely valuable.
For sure.
Is there anything else around this measurement area or metrics that people can be measuring against that you wanted to touch upon?
I think it's just one of the things I think is most important, again, is to group things in the right area. But at the end of the day, I think having video is going to increase the value of your brand in a lot of ways. So even if you can't measure specifically a certain area of a video, especially on the social side of things, that doesn't mean that it's not important to have or to do. We always try more than anything, like I said, to make sure that everything that we're doing is tracking back to an ultimate KPI or that we're able to measure the revenue that we're getting from that. But that's not always going to be the case. And I think if there's an area where you feel like you're producing a lot of video content, but you're not seeing those types of results, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily failing for you. You might just want to change the way that you're measuring that, or the way that success, or what success necessarily means for that particular video. Because at the end of the day, building your brand and creating more value around your brand can help increase things that aren't necessarily measurable in some ways.
Yeah, we've been learning more and more that there is such a thing as being too data-driven. We were holding back on focusing on video because at first, before we had Vidyard or anything like that, we were like, well, how are we going to track it? It's a huge investment of time and money. We're going to have to hire a whole new person for this. But we took the plunge, and it's really paying off. And fortunately, we do have a platform where we can really effectively measure its contribution to revenue. The same goes for branding, and video is obviously related to that because it is a great way to really exemplify your branding. Investing in those things that are intangible is really, really underrated and undervalued.
And at the end of the day, like I said, it just really comes back to creating a different form of success for different types of videos. Some videos that you're using at the bottom of the funnel, you're going to be able to directly measure how much those drove revenue, but other ones, that might not be the case.
And it takes some time too, until you get to that stage and you actually see, well, was this the right thing for us to measure against? And If so, okay, well, we'll keep doing this. And if not, how do we change that? Maybe we need to change what we're trying to measure, or maybe we need to change something about the video or our approach there. So it's really telling once you get there if you're doing things right or not. And there's a lot of different variables that can play into why maybe something isn't measurable in the way that you thought it was going to be. So it takes time to kind of finesse that stage.
Definitely.
Yeah, test everything.
Yes.
The worst thing you can do is keep your content stagnant. I mean, that goes for anything in your marketing or sales strategy. If you're not consistently optimizing and testing, you know, you're dying. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to wrap things up soon, but I have a question for you because I kind of go about this debate for myself a bit around if somebody hasn't, you know, started with video yet, this process can seem like really inundating. It's a lot to like dive into and try to learn about every step along the way. So what would you recommend somebody do? You know, is it more important to just try and try out a video really quick, something a little bit smaller, where you're just like shooting with your phone and testing that out? Or should you really try and just like dive into this process and just see how that goes and know that either way, like you are experimenting, it's going to be your first run at it?
Yeah.
I think the first thing I would say, and going back to some of the things I said earlier, is most videos online are short. They're going to be less than 2 minutes in length. So you don't need to worry about creating a full sitcom worth of content necessarily. You don't need to create 20 minutes worth of content to create a good video. So I think it's nice to kind of get comfortable dabbling a little bit. Most phones that people have today have a pretty high quality camera on them, so you don't need to go out and invest in a camera to create a video anymore. And some companies are even sticking with that as their primary means of creating video content. So I would probably recommend getting started with that, getting comfortable on that side of things before diving all in on video with getting a camera and going on that side of things. And not because you shouldn't do that down the line, but more to get comfortable with the process first until you want to invest in the right type of equipment, the right types of cameras, lighting equipment, and studios and stuff like that before creating videos for the first time.
Yeah, and I'd say like with those types of videos, the stakes are a lot lower, so there's a lot more room for trial and error and optimization, things like that. And to Guido's point about, you know, using a cell phone, you would be like super shocked at how great these videos can actually turn out. There's even like little apps to edit phone videos like right on your iPhone. It was actually really funny. I got interviewed at HubSpot's Inbound conference by a journalist from Germany a few months ago, and he was like, I got contacted and they're like, oh, they want to do an interview with you, and he shows up with a cell phone. And I was like, okay, like this is all right. And he had this like little phone tripod, and we set it up, and he just like used like a normal dynamic microphone. It had like a literal headphone jack thing instead of an XLR cable, which was really funny. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really weird. I've never done this before. And then it turned out awesome. It was a great piece of content. You could not tell that it was shot on a cell phone. The audio quality was great. And so I was really amazed, and it really just shows that you don't have to have a full 10-person production team and thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment and lighting and audio equipment and stuff like that to be successful with video. And my advice is just to do it, because if you keep waiting, you know, you're gonna fall behind, because as we explained earlier, it's not an option anymore. In order to be competitive in almost every industry, you have to really be creating video. And
another thing that'll just kind of happen organically as you start creating those lower quality or lower barrier to entry types of videos to start off with is you'll want to get more creative, you'll want to do more with it, and that'll naturally lead you to the next stage of getting it more invested in creating video content and investing in higher level cameras and stuff like that. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you both so much for coming in to chat with me today. Definitely. This is great. I learned a lot in this process. Thank you all very much for tuning in to the masterclass today. If you haven't checked out the Academy Learning Center, go to academy.hubspot.com. I know both of you already have some certifications with us, and you can get free certifications to not only grow your business, but grow your career. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having us. We made it. Live in a snowstorm. We're going to go back tomorrow. Good.